Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. This is the third edition of our Let's Strategize series, where we invite stalwarts of different organizations and different industries to share more insights. And the intent of this is more to learn how things operate and how we can continue uh, building our own investment cycles or our businesses much better. So today we have Shubhankar. Shubhankar is the co-founder of Propstack, one of India's largest data analytics platform for real estate. I would say rather pioneers of that domain. And just as a disclosure, Propstack is an investor of Strata as well. Been our partners and been supportive from day one since we started our business as such. Thank you, Shubhankar, for joining in.
Thanks for having me over, Sudarshan.
Pleasure is ours, Shubhankar. I would just like to start up if you, as an icebreaker for everyone, how did Propstack begin? Where did the idea come from? And what have been your great learnings ever since you started the entire business as such?
Sure. So, look, I mean, like most what you'd call modern age startups now, I think for us also it was a combination of experience and personal struggles. So, we're three founders. There's me, there's Raja, and there's Raja Sitaraman, Sandeep Reddy. All three of us do come from real estate backgrounds before we got together to start Propstack. And so Raja's been in the services, real estate services industry for very long, and Sandeep was with doing real estate institutional equities, real estate IPOs, had his own startup as well into group buying of property. And I was also in the services industry with JLL for some time. I also had prior background in data analytics per se, and that was generally in the nascent stages of the data industry in India. So, while through our experience in real estate, we realized that there are two paths to data and information. One is that in any investment or decision making, data is always an input. It always has been. Now, 10 years back, 50 years back, whatever. It's just the kind of data or information that has gone into investment decision making had not particularly been very inspiring, for lack of better word.
Mm-hmm.
So, say prior to Propstack, what we observed through our experience was a lot of information was largely based on market information. There was a lot of subjectivity around what potentially should have been objective data points. Now, for example, pricing, comparables, technically should be an objective point. I mean, if a deal's done at a price, it's done at a price. So why should that be a matter of opinion? But, we observed that, for the same transaction, you ask two different people, you'll get two different answers. And we said, that's not how it should be. There has to be something that inspires confidence, because you're putting a lot of money, a lot of hard-earned money into, real estate is a big ticket, investment. So how can you, be jittery? How you have to be objective. You have to have verified information that goes into your decision making, right? The other part to it was that, which was quite, I'll be honest, was quite startling for us in around 2011 or 12. We found out that India, contrary to what most people expect, is quite a transparent country, especially when it comes to real estate. So whenever there's a transaction, whether it's at a corporate level or at an individual level or a mortgage, there's always an agreement that's signed. And that agreement has to then be registered with the government so that it can become a legally admissible document as and when required, right? Now, turns out these documents become public domain immediately, right? And for the longest time, and even today, to large parts, these documents are generally accessed by lawyers, people who are used to doing these kind of searches. But this is where the real information lies, right? What's written in the document is written in the document, and that's the information, right? You can't challenge it. And we realized that, under certain processes and procedures, these can be procured. Now, the trick was can we meaningfully procure this information in large enough volumes and then make that entire vast sea of information, put it through a processor, and make it available in a format or in a view um, to participants in the real estate market, Indian real estate market, which kind of solves, both the points that I mentioned. One is data that you can uh, verify and be comfortable utilizing when that drives your investment decision making. And secondly, of course, making it structured, because I mean, for example, if somebody comes and gives you a bunch of 100 agreements, registered agreements, are you going to read through all of them? No, it's going to be a tedious process. And then how are you going to make sense of any of the information, right? So we brought structure to the whole data and investing sort of practice in India.
Very interesting insights on a couple of things which you were talking about, right? But generally, with whatever you built, which is very simple for your clients to use, the way they can analyze their data and make investment decisions. Like you said, if it's a sale transaction happen this price, there's no two questions. This is the price. This is what ideally should be your benchmark to buy. Maybe pay a little premium in case the asset is very good and keep doing it, right? But how has the access to to your platform help your clients? Have you seen your clients change the way their entire behavior towards investment has been once they had access to this data in a more simplified manner, which didn't exist earlier as such? What has been the journey of your clients and how they have scaled their businesses or saved money through your platform as such?
So I think there are two observations we've made, Sudarshan. One is when we started this business back in 2012-13, the concept, and I'm not talking about certain specific clients, I'm generally talking about the industry on the whole, was not very accustomed or used to paying for data, especially in real estate. And because they were not used to structured information, and they did not probably were not used to seeing the difference it can make uh, in your decision making, right? And that changed over time from 2012, 13, 14, 15. Suddenly, every segment of um, institutional investing in real estate started tipping over to the other side, saying, look, you know, it's almost become a hygiene factor. Data started using structured data, started becoming a hygiene factor, which generally wasn't the case. And then when that happens, people start paying. And over time, it just became the norm. So the point I'm trying to drive over here is that people started seeing the difference that data was making, quality information and structured information was making, and were willing to pay for it, right? So clearly, it was making a difference. The other point is that, look, I mean, it's not like, we came and suddenly with the introduction of Propstack, the returns investors started making changed or increased. Nothing of the sort, right? I mean, uh, there was no magic wand here as such. But what I can definitely vouch for is that the predictability around outcomes improves. Correct. With structured information, with quality information and data that you can trust and rely on. So it takes away a little bit of uncertainty. It's not like you're expecting a certain high return, mid level return, or a low return depending on your risk profile. It will remain that. It's just that the predictability around the return that you anticipate while going into an investment is a lot sturdier when you use good quality information. So, I mean, like I said, there was no really, it's not like we suddenly brought an upside to the whole market. The market still brought back returns, in the way the experts in the market always envisaged it. But it definitely brought around a lot of efficiency in deal making, in investment decisions. And I think also it increased the number of participants in the market. For a lot of time, it generally was a domain of experts and certain institutions who were carved out for investing in real estate. But and that was only because of access to information, right? When you don't have access to information, a certain segment is not confident of making investments. I mean, you can see it yourself, right? I mean, the participants in stable income yielding office assets is a lot larger as a base now than it was a decade back, right? And that is the difference, I think, big difference that we observe, that when you make data and information available, and for lack of a better word, I wouldn't go as far as saying commoditized yet, but information available to everybody, it gives a lot more confidence in, sticking your neck out, putting your money into the market.
I think, Shubhankar, there's one point which I would like to bring, right? What Propstack has built confidence in real estate to people, right? This is one time where they know, especially with access to information, as you mentioned, they are more confident now, okay, or at least they're well aware if they're buying at a discount, they're buying at a premium, or they're buying at a market price, right? Which itself is a huge, like I said, a confidence, a self-confidence itself that, okay, my investment is right. And like you said, the participants have only increased because they're now more confident about investing in this asset class, which has always been opaque. And I can give you examples. We've had our clients saying that, I don't even know what price my neighbor bought his apartment for. And eventually when he's buying, and when they become friends, and when they open up, and people have this tendency of probably telling 500 rupees more than probably what they buy, or they might not tell the right fact. But once they become friends, they realize they bought more or less at the same week, but someone paid 100, 200 rupees more than the other person, just because they didn't know, right? So that 100, 200 rupees in a 2000 square feet apartment is 2 lakh rupees. It's a substantial amount of money. So, when I'm sure your clients have also understood that the amount of savings is a lot more than paying and, buying this information, which gives you confidence, if not mental satisfaction, of what, you guys have built as such.
No, absolutely.
No, Shubhankar, I mean, kudos to you. Democratizing and giving access to this itself is a huge thing, right? So, brings to my next question, right? I mean, what are the key data points, as such, people who are listeners, etc., the people who are willing to invest into commercial real estate? But I would want you to break it down into 2 points. What are the key data pointers what investors should look at when they are investing in commercial as well as residential as an investment?
Sure. So, look, I mean, once you can split information types into two categories, so as to speak. One is objective information or subjective information. Now, like I said, you want to attempt to make your decision making based on as much objective information as possible, right, and minimize the subjectivity in the data that you have. But the fact of the matter is that subjectivity can never be taken out of, especially real estate investing, right? So, sorry, just give me 1 second.
No problem. So for people, until Shubhankar comes back, Shubhankar's company even has a platform called Zapki. Zapki is a platform which they have recently made it more accessible to a larger audience, just about a year and a half. Maybe Shubhankar, you can correct me if it was accessible earlier and I was not aware, which is to get residential data, where you can now know the prices of sale transactions which have happened in your vicinity, or probably your same apartment itself, and probably help you take better investment decisions as well, right? So, sorry, Shubhankar, I was just giving people what you guys have built up. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry, I had to step out for a second, but I'll touch up on Zapki probably a little later in this conversation, right? So I was talking about the information that's available to you. You want to make your data as objective as possible and minimize the subjectivity, but subjectivity in real estate investing can never be ignored. There will always be subjective aspects to real estate investing, very specific to, pretty much always very specific to individual assets at asset level, right? But for example, the earlier example I'd given, how do you make minimize subjectivity in the data that you use? I spoke about pricing, right? I mean, why should pricing be subjective? A price is a price. What your neighbor bought the next unit for is the price or is the last comp. And that is something that can't be a matter of opinion, right? So you want to bring those kind of key data points into your objective set, right? So generally speaking, in an objective set, when you're making an investment decision, I think at the top level, absolute top level is you got to think about how are you making the investment? Are you making the investment yourself directly? Are you making the investment um, under or through an investment manager, right? Now, obviously, if you're doing it through an investment scheme or a fund or through an investment manager, the information over there is how good is that investment manager, right? So your information and your data and everything has to be about what kind of experience and what kind of returns and what kind of pedigree, so as to speak, the manager might have. But coming to the other part is, if you're trying to look at it, trying to make an investment yourself, then obviously you need to get into what you're basically doing is everybody is making an investment for a return, right?
Yeah.
So what you essentially need to boil down to is that whatever price I am going in at today, am I seeing that price multiplying? Whatever is your investment horizon, right? 2, 3, 5 years down the line. What's that going to look like over then? And obviously, you want that to be an X or a multiple of what you're buying in today, which basically means that the demand for that asset has to be a lot more at the end of the horizon than it is today. So one is, so you have to look at demand drivers, potential demand drivers, right? So potential demand drivers generally are more macroeconomic indicators, infrastructural initiatives, and this is the kind of information I think generally you will get from your economic sources, your newspapers. If you're going through an investment manager, of course, you have a sit down with the investment manager, think about his view about what that particular micro locality or asset where it's sitting down currently is going to look like. I mean, for example, things like a brand new airport coming up, make such a huge difference to a certain region that it's coming to, because when an airport comes, it improves logistics, improves. I mean, for example, warehousing, right? Any logistical infrastructural initiatives that come new is obviously a big fillip or a boost, right? So to be frank, it is more an approach based decision that you have to take, rather than me enumerating key data points as such. But if you really want to boil down to key data points, is whatever your price is today that you're going in at, you need to ask yourself, one is, am I overpaying? Am I at market? Am I going under market, right? If I'm going below market, fantastic news, great news, because you were already in the money if you're already paying, below the market. But then the question beckons is, why is this particular asset price lower than the market, right? So there's got to be something in it. It's got something to do with the quality of the asset. It's got something to do with probably a new flyover coming and blocking access to my asset over here, and people are bailing on this asset. So there are lots of moving parts to your decision making, but the most important, obviously, the key data point is the number you're going in at, very simply put. Because look, even if the asset is in demand today, or is in demand later, or is currently not in demand at all today, the decision you need to make is, what is the delta on my price I am going to get at the end of my investment horizon when I go in today at a certain price, right? You just have to be confident about that equation.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I think more than that, like I said, right, that even builds confidence that and someone can sleep peacefully that they bought it at the right price.
Correct. I mean, look, there are very typical indicators when you look at commercial real estate, right? Like I said, price comparables, vacancy. Vacancy is what's going to tell you about that particular micro market today, right? How good or bad or how much of a demand is there for this particular micro market. Then it's not only a vacancy is not only a dynamic point. You've got to look at it in context. Has that vacancy come down or has that vacancy gone up? If it's come down, what's the problem? If it's gone up, how much further potential does it have? I mean, in terms of occupancy, sorry, not vacancy, right? Then you got to look at, things like new supply, right? New supply, what's the projected new supply coming in that particular micro market, right? It's going to come and compete with your asset, right? Is that comparable in terms of your asset quality or not? Or is it going to be better? Is it going to take away your tenant or not? So these are very typical data points that you obviously as a commercial real estate investor will look at, right? But that's at the absolute top level, right? And all of these things fall in your objective set.
Correct.
Right. But what I was also, the point I stressed on before this is that subjectivity will never go out of real estate investing. And it is in fact a very essential component when you pick between asset one or asset two. Generally, what ends up kicking in is the subjective layer.
Completely agreed. I mean, which brings me to a very important question, right? I think most of us are very curious to know what's going to happen next, especially now that post-pandemic unlocks are happening. We're seeing companies coming out. You're sitting on all the data, you know what's happening at a much faster, I would say. You get more access to information before the market gets in a way, and you get access to information which is more authentic rather than hearsay, which perhaps we hear it in media or from friends or whatever, right? So how do you see is market reviving in general for commercial real estate?
So look, India generally in the past few years, pre-pandemic, it has been let's take office as an example of an asset class, commercial real estate, right? We've generally been about, say, anywhere between 37 to 40 million square feet of net absorption in the top office markets in India. Right? I mean, when I say top, I mean Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, etc., etc. Obviously, the pandemic hit us, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And one is, of course, a lot of businesses ran out of business, albeit temporarily. The other thing was generally uncertainty, and obviously 2020 ended up being, I wouldn't call it a washout, but we did about 25, 26 million square feet of the absorption still. And that kind of, so I would say from a COVID perspective was, at least that's what data is showing, was kind of the bottom, right? But the next couple of quarters, I think in 2021, Q1 and Q2, started showing slow signs of recovery. But I think the Q3, especially Q3 21, right, almost has started showing signs that we're kind of back on track, about 11, 12 million square feet. I don't know. I mean, if the trend continues, we could end up fairly close to how things were pre-pandemic, close to the 37, 38 million absorption mark. But, that's what data is saying.
Yeah.
From a more personal experience perspective, you can look around now, right? I mean, for a long time, there were talks and chatter about, is work from home here to stay for good, which basically means there's a huge dent in demand for office, right? But over time, organizations realized that it's not sustainable, right? So people started talking about hybrid. Can we, move certain teams, or can we do a little bit of work from office, a little bit of work from home? And those experiments carried on for some time. And even that is slowly starting to veer towards pre-pandemic office occupancy behavior, saying, look, even that little bit of work from home is a little difficult. So the point is now is that maybe there will be a certain work from home for good, maybe, or for the foreseeable future, but not to the levels that was envisaged, say, in 2020, right? This entire, it was, of course, COVID was bad, but the entire feeling of a doomsday situation that, went through all our minds in 2020, it's not the case today. There is optimism, there's enthusiasm, and you're seeing it in the markets, you're seeing it in the capital markets, you're seeing it in the entire uh, startup space. You obviously know of all the IPOs that are going through, at what levels. So there's a lot of enthusiasm, and with enthusiasm, it's the enthusiasm is sort of flowing into the entire commercial real estate occupancy space. So it looks like we're getting back on track. We may not be absolutely back on track by the end of this year. Maybe, taking some more baby steps may take us about 6-9 months, maybe even a year more, to see. The other point is, of course, that, even developers during COVID put a screeching halt on, new projects, right? Now, what will happen is demand will catch up with the supply there is in the market, probably for some time, because commercial real estate development cycles are fairly long. They take time to come into the market, right? So you may even see a bit of firming up of rents in the medium future, until even the supply cycle is back to pre-COVID levels, right? That's when you will finally get back to market equilibrium. So that's generally how our observation is.
No, you're right, Shubhankar. In fact, we're fortunate to get a diversified investor base, and we get to learn a lot more from them. And a couple of the investors who run large GCCs mentioned that there are more than 400 GCCs who are looking at entering into India in the next 3 to 4 years itself, each looking at hiring at least from 1,000 people to 10-20,000 people each. And the existing, which is about 1,500 odd GCCs, which we have right now, are looking at expanding multi-fold in terms of their hiring as well, right? So that halt which developers put in 2020 is going to cost a little bit, where GCs are looking at entering, and there is a good chance they might not have space to the time when they want to enter, and most of them might want to delay. I just hope that does not hamper their decision of entering India and go to some other country. But having said that, these are great signs from Indian economy standpoint, and technology would, at least in my opinion, absorb at least 60-70% of all the demand itself in office space, right? So great. I'll come to my last question, and probably hit people, whatever question answers you have, please feel free to write in the question answers tab. Shubhankar, please tell us what's new at Propstack. What you're working at Zapkey. It's a very interesting proposition which you're working on. Would love everyone to know.
Sure. So look, at Propstack, we're constantly attempting to improve the quality of data, the amount of data, and the way the data is delivered to our clients on the online interface. At Propstack, it's not only commercial, or rather office as an asset class. We've divided our data products per asset class. So we cater to office, we cater to warehousing, where we've seen a massive uptake in demand, which obviously demand for our data, which basically means demand for the asset class, right? Huge interest. Generally speaking, commercial office plus warehousing has seen a lot of institutional investment coming in over the past, let's say, 12 months as well, right? So that's the other product that we do. The third product that we do, if I don't say so myself, is basically mortgages. So basically, we have a product that is a database of wholesale mortgages, where it caters to the real estate lending space. I'd say about 75, 3/4, or maybe slightly more, is mostly lending to the residential sector. The other lending, of course, is largely to commercial, which is LRDs, right? Lease rental discounting. So that's another product of ours. And of course, then there is Zapkey. Zapkey is our consumer endeavor. Now, we've been catering to the institutional space, to institutional clients with our information for a long time. And we realized that, why not we're democratizing data. Why not we make it available to the individual, right? And Zapkey is purely residential focused. So currently we do Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Delhi, where a consumer just goes to zapkey.com. And you can type in a particular building's name, it drops down um, reverse chronologically, latest transactions registered with the government. So it's not just sale. It completely depends on which state you're in. So it could be registered sales, registered home loans, and registered rentals, right? You can actually see what was the last price or value paid for a particular deal in a particular building in the cities that I just named. Um, and that has kind of gone viral because, it's a very high utility application, right? I mean, like Sudarshan said, that making smart decisions and saving 100 or 200 bucks per square foot means a total saving of a few lakhs, right? So why not, right? And real estate is such a is an investment that's so close to our Indian hearts, right? It's the largest for most of the world. It's the largest investment we'll make in our lives.
Yep.
So you jolly well do it right. So, and of course that's just a conduit into what we're trying to do with Zapkis. We're basically working on building a concept of trust and transparency in the real estate. We want to make the reputation of the sector multifold better, right? That people are always jittery, biggest investment of your life, but the most scared, and obviously for obvious good reason, right? And we want to dispel that fear, that lack of trust, as much as we can. And yes, at Zapki, then we're using data to build further more products. We're getting into the trying to bring liquidity to the resale home space as well at Zapki. So we'll keep everyone updated. Watch out for this space.
I'm very excited about that. It's one of the most interesting products perhaps India is going to see as well. Great. I'll just come to a few questions, Shubhankar. What investors have asked us is I'll merge two questions together. Uh, Real estate typically, like you said, is a very opaque industry in itself. With regards to transactions where there is a different kind of consideration paid. How does that affect the quality of the data or the pricing, officially available, right? What are the parameters which we use in terms of benchmarking that?
Great question, and it's something honestly I should have touched upon myself when I spoke about it some time back. Is that yes, unfortunately in India, um, components still exist in a transaction, right? Of different colors, of different shades. So obviously the white shade of the component is what is registered with the government. Um, Now there are a couple of things over here. One is yes, our observation is that the darker component has over time been dwindling, right? With demonetization, with radar coming in, things have gotten a lot better, but they are not completely out of the system. Um, and that remains the case. But good news is, yes, it's on a downward spiral, and maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, one day it just won't exist, right? Um, but having said that, what we do is the data that we bring to our customers is untouched, right? We bring you pristine data just the way we see it in the registrar's office. That's how we show it to you. What we do encourage our users is to use a good volume of data. So, for example, at Zapki, I will not recommend a potential buyer of an apartment to look at the last deal singularly. We would encourage them to look at last 10, 15, 20 transactions, right? Because that will give you a fair estimate of what the median value, depending on the particular characteristics of the asset, should converge at. So, we do not want to bring some, like I said, we don't want to mess with the data. We don't want to bring subjectivity to the data. So if something's priced at 50,000 and if it's showing 30,000, I don't want to add another 20K and tell you, boss, this is 50,000, because that'll just defeat the entire purpose. The best way to get around it is use a substantial, considerable volume of information.
Yeah.
That will bring you peace.
So if I have to put it up in a more simpler manner, is in a building there are 10 floors with 40 units, go through all and get a benchmarking. There might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, but there can be another 10 which is at the price which is ideally the right price, right? Where the discounted, what we assume could be the darker side of the cash, could not have come into picture in itself, right? So these are ways where you can identify and still get the right benchmarking. Is what Shubhankar has say. So consume more data and put your benchmarking yourself. But again, please remember one thing: real estate does not have an MRP, unfortunately. So small differences here and there are always going to happen, and it's something which we should live with it irrespective of what. Yeah, I think out of all the questions, I think majority of the questions were pretty much on this. I think it's such an integral part, especially in India in itself, which I hope, as Zapki keeps growing bigger and bigger, this can, like you said, dwindled, becomes completely eliminated in itself. Great. So I think lots of guys who want to understand, the platform is called Zapki. It's zapki.com. You can log in and you can, play around with the entire platform and get the entire idea of what is this new initiative, what Propstack is building. So for people who have any sort of questions around that, always log in, and there's a team which will always respond back with whatever queries you may have. Great, Shubhankar. Thank you so much for joining in. Any last thoughts you may want to tell our folks who joined in and given half an hour of their valuable time to us?
Well, last thoughts is, look, we're at, everybody's talking about it. We're getting the feeling, we're getting feelers, both from a softer perspective as well as from data and information, that we're at the beginning of a favorable cycle in real estate. All of us who are participants in the property market, we're very bullish right now. I wouldn't call this false optimism, because data speaks for itself. So these are exciting times, and hope we can all have a good time over the next few years.
Awesome. Great, Shubhankar. Thank you so much for joining in, and thank you everyone.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.